Okay. Okay, thank you everybody for coming. And thank you to Kollel for the opportunity to give over this shiur. We're going to start just speaking out, be makdim with some of the Gemaras. Some of them were in this booklet, some of them is going to speak out, and then we'll get down to the main question at hand. So, Gemara number 1, which is not in the booklet, the Gemara tells us on Daf Yud Gimel in Megillah that the Gemara dashes from a pasuk that Esther was married to Mordechai. Fact number 1, they were happily married until Achashveirosh's henchmen come along and grab her to the palace. The first Gemara we have copied over here in Yud Gimel on the base tells us another interesting fact, that even after Esther was grabbed by Achashveirosh's men and had become the queen, she would have a relationship with Achashveirosh, and then she would return to live with her husband still Mordechai. They still kept up their marriage. The Gemara tells us that before she would go back to Mordechai, she would go to the mikvah. And Rashi speaks out, the reason why she went to the mikvah is because of nikiyus, a certain level of purity. She should not be disgusting to the tzaddik. It's a simple level of purity that she had a relationship with Achashveirosh. Before she went back to her husband Mordechai, she would go to the mikvah and then she would return to Mordechai. That's the second Gemara. The third Gemara, which is going to be the main focus of the shiur, which is on page 2 in the booklet, the Gemara in Daf Tesvav in Megillah. The Gemara says, I'm going to read from where its bracket off in the middle, Leich kinois es kol Yehudim. Esther was telling Mordechai, if you want me to go into Achashveirosh without being asked, please go gather all the Jews and daven and fast, etc. The pasuk ends off ad asher loy kadof, because what she was doing was against the rules. She wasn't going within the realm of the rules of the palace. That's a simple reading of the pasuk, but the Gemara expounds upon it a little more, and the Gemara says, Rabbi Abba says, shalo kadof. What does it mean it's going against the rules? Not just the rules of Achashveirosh, but rather it's going against the rules of Hashem. Shebachol yoyim v'yoyim, because every day until now, until now, every time Achashveirosh called Esther into his room, it was always she was going against her will. She was forced. The Achshav, but now she's going willingly. She's going b'ratzayin, and that's going to be a change in the relationship between Achashveirosh and Esther. And furthermore, the pasuk says, the Gemara continues, the kasher avadati. Esther was telling Mordechai, I'm now going to be lost. That what? The Gemara explains that to mean, Kishem she'avadati base Abba, just like I was lost in my father's household, that Esther, as we know, was a yisoma, she was an orphaned girl. So now Esther is telling Mordechai, Kach ovei b'mecha. Not only was I lost from my father's house, that I have no parents, at least I had you until now, but now that I'm going willingly to Achashveirosh, I'm become prohibited to you. So what's going on over here? The Gemara, the way Rashi explains the Gemara, what's happening is that Esther wasn't just entering Achashveirosh's room for a regular chat. What Mordechai had told her to do was to go seduce Achashveirosh for a relationship, and now that she was going willingly to live with Achashveirosh, so Rashi explains the halacha that an Eshes Yisrael, a married Jewish woman that has an affair with another man willingly, she becomes prohibited to return to her husband. She's a steward to the husband. When it's by force, when she went until now, or any other case of Eshes Yisrael that's forced to have a relationship with another man, she's still permitted to return to her husband unless the husband's a kohen. That's a side point. But in this case, Mordechai was not a kohen. So therefore, at this point, like the Gemara said previously, she was permitted to return to Mordechai. But now that she's going in on her own free will, and the Gemara explains that to mean that she was going to seduce Achashveirosh for a forbidden relationship, so now she's become a steward to Mordechai. At this point on, she's going to have to break off her marriage with Mordechai. That's the Gemara with Rashi. That's it?
Question.
Sure.
Why is that called Rashi? Because she was doing it for the sake of pleasure, so she wasn't doing it.
That's a good point. But the fact that she initiated it, that's showing that you're right. Technically, if you would have asked her, she didn't necessarily want to do it, but you can't say that she was forced to go to that. There was a level there of a certain amount of free will. She could have told, to some extent, she could have told Mordechai, I don't want to go, and she sort of did, and Mordechai gave her a Musar shmuz, right? Who knows what you were chosen for? But there was a certain level of free will there that she went on her own accord to knock on Achashveirosh's door. Why does it have to be Midaiti? Right, from now, I've actually said the words that from now on, it's going to be Achashveirosh. It's a good question. Even if it wouldn't be, only needed one time, technically, like you're saying, only is one time that she went willingly, she became asura to her husband. Doesn't make a difference what happens afterwards.
Well, I said that maybe this time she's caught. There's no bigger audience than saving Christ, girl. But the Elof, that's what's really getting it.
Okay, good point. Even if you're going to... Okay, the simple reading... Okay, that's a good point. But the simple reading of the Gemara with Rashi is that she's going willingly now, and this itself was alone to answer her. Rabbi Witten is pointing out that Rashi seems to imply that from now on, all the relationships between Achashveirosh and Esther were going to be willingly, and that's also a problem. But once she's already asura, halachically doesn't play out, doesn't come more usher if next time also is usher. Okay.
I was going to say that general her act of karka olam was megala now that she's going in baratzon that she can't blind that the whole thing is karka olam having no part.
Okay, definitely maybe. Taisus on Daf Tezvav has a question. Taisus asks, in Taimar, it's bracketed off on the top of Tezvav and Aleph, asks Taisus, Amai loy hoya megarsha? Why didn't Mordechai simply divorce Esther? And if she was divorced, let's speak out a little bit. The halacha is that a woman who is divorced is still permitted, it's even a mitzvah for her husband to remarry, her first husband to remarry her. That's only if she does not get remarried to somebody else. If once a woman is divorced, let's say Leah was divorced from Reuven, and then Leah went ahead and got married to Shimon, she's now, even if she gets divorced from Shimon, she's asura, she's forbidden forever to get married, to go back and live again with Reuven. However, there's a halacha which is proven from Gemara and Saita. We're not going to discuss the raya for it right now, but halacha is, it's a married woman. Again, a woman got divorced, and then she went ahead and had an affair with another man. Then she's still permitted to return to her first husband. As long as she was not married to another man, she's permitted to return to her first husband. So as Taisus, why didn't Mordechai divorce Esther? And if they're divorced, even though now she was going willingly to live with Achashveirosh, but later on down the line, Esther can get remarried to Mordechai, and they could live happily ever after again, like they were before. Now, it wasn't happily ever after, but it was to have at least some relationship that they were able to keep before she went willingly. She was able to keep this relationship afterwards as well, if Mordechai would have simply given her a gift. Seems like a valid question. Says Taisus, Yesh Loimar, Taisus answers, reading from inside Taisus on Tezvav, the middle of the bracket, Yesh Loimar, Lefisha Kol Maisa HaGet, the whole idea of a get, the whole deal of a get, Hu Alpi Edim, a get requires witnesses, V'haya Yareh, and Mordechai was afraid, Pen Yitzparsim Hadavar L'Malchus. He was afraid that it would become public knowledge to the king. Taisus doesn't elaborate exactly what Mordechai was afraid of. The way I'm understanding it, that he was afraid that if the king would find out that Mordechai was married to Esther, and now he was living with her, and now he divorced her because she was going willingly, the whole story wouldn't sit well with a king, that his queen is having an affair with or was married to somebody else, and she's going back there, and now to come back to him. The whole ping pong game wouldn't play out well in the tabloids. So Mordechai was afraid that either he would get killed, Esther would get killed, and therefore he decided, let's keep it a hush, and he wouldn't divorce her. So again, Taisus asked, why didn't Mordechai divorce her, and then she would be permitted to return to Mordechai later on by getting remarried to Mordechai? And Taisus answers that since a get requires Edim, and that once you have Edim, it becomes well known, the Chaver Islay, people have friends, people start schmoozing, and he was afraid that it would get back to the king that she was a divorced woman, and this was her ex-husband living over there, the whole story wouldn't sound right, and therefore he decided not to give her a get. That's Taisus' teretz. On page 3,
Achashveirosh wanted to take her in the first place. Not do it.
Okay, right. So that's another question. How she passed that first stage of the test, so to speak. She wasn't a basula. That's a valid question. But okay. The Rajba is going on this Gemara, and we'll speak out. He just quotes the Gemara that Esther was going to come prohibited to Mordechai. Now she was going willingly to Achashveirosh. The Rajba quotes Taisus' question and quotes Taisus' answer, and the Rajba is upset with Taisus' answer. If you look in the paragraph of the Rajba, it's 2, 3, 4, 5 lines from the bottom, in the middle of the line after the comma, it says, Ve'enai nochai. He quotes Taisus, and he says, I disagree. Ve'enai nochai ve'enai. I disagree with what Taisus said, because the Yichtav law, the Mordechai could have just written for Esther, Biksav Yodai, he could have written her a handwritten get, Shu Kasher De'araisa. A handwritten get by Torah law is kosher. It's a valid get. The fact that you have to have witnesses and the get has to be, in a whole Ma'aseh Bezdin that has to be done with witnesses and it's a whole procedure, that's all rabbinic. Mid'araisa, the husband has to write her a note, dear ex-wife, you are now free and go anything you want, love your ex-husband, and then she can go out and she's technically permitted mid'oraisa to get married to somebody else. So that which Tosfos said, that the reason why Mordechai didn't want to give her a get is because you need Eidim and it'd be too much of a hole to do, and people are going to know about it. So says the Rajba, what's the big deal? You don't need Eidim. That's rabbinic. That's true. At least he should get a Torah level to get her divorced. So at least on a Torah level, the whole severity of her story won't be so severe. She won't be an Ish, and on a Torah level, she'll be able to get remarried to Mordechai. So why didn't, ask the Rajba, why didn't he divorce her with a Ksav Yad, with a handwritten get, which is Kasher D'Oraisa? So again, back inside the Rajba, 4 lines from the bottom, the Rajba says, it would have been good for Mordechai to do this, to her Esther, because what Esther did, Heichi of the Hachi. How could really, the whole story of Esther is very hard to digest. The Hashta B'Ritzoyna Niveles, now she's going on her own free will, she's having a relationship with Achashveirosh, V'Tiharet V'Altava. This is one of the 3 cardinal sins that she should have to give up her life and not transgress. So the whole story here is very hard to swallow, says Raj, and it would have been much better if we would know that there was at least a divorce on a biblical level. And if Mordechai would have divorced her with a handwritten note, then Esther would not be transgressing a severe sin of a forbidden relationship on the extreme level. Now, it's still prohibited for a Jewish girl to live with a guy, nonetheless, but the severity of a married Jewish woman, at least you play down one level severity, one severe level less.
Why would you still be careful about housing? Because
it's a good question. It gets involved in the technical parameters of Yarg Vayava. It could even be according to some Yisharim, you're right. Even this mice itself would have been Yarg Vayava, even if she would have been divorced. But at least according to Rashba, I don't know if he means the halacha would have been Yarg Vayava, or at least it wouldn't have been as severe as the Avera of she's a married woman. Just at least on a simple level, he's playing. You can at least make it the case be less severe. And if you would have divorced her with a Ksav Yah, with a handwritten get, she would not become prohibited to Mordechai. And here comes the bottom line of the Rajba. How does Rajba deal with this whole problem? He's stuck in a quandary now. The Rajba says, Elo Shadivri Agodahain, this Gemara is agadic in nature, and it's hard for us to explain all the parameters of exactly what happened. So, what does that mean exactly? And that's going to be part of our discussion. What does that mean? This Gemara is Agoda, right? The Gemara is recounting for us some of the details of the story that are not apparent from the reading of the Megillah. We sit and we hear the Megillah at face value. The Megillah is never explicit that Mordechai was married to Esther. The Megillah is never explicit that Esther would go back from Achashveirosh and live with Mordechai. And the Megillah is never explicit that after she went willingly to Achashveirosh, she became Asur to Mordechai. All these things are only revealed to us from Torah Shabbat Peh. All these things are only revealed to us, the Chacham and the Gemara revealed it to us. So, it's seemingly that the Raj was saying that all we have is the facts as Chazal told it to us, and all the nitty-gritty details of why didn't they do this or why didn't they do that, Chazal will never megale it to us, and it's hard to understand exactly every stage of the game, exactly what happened. We have good questions, but the Chas Hashem, like the Chaznish speaks out, which is a bottom paragraph on this page, it doesn't mean Chas Hashem that the Rajba is saying this Gemara is incomprehensible. It's very comprehensible. You have a question on this Gemara, and it's hard for us to figure out exactly all these details of exactly what happened. So, for the rest of the time, I'd like to focus and go discuss 3 main tshuvas. One is going to be a tshuva, a response written by the Rishonim. One is a tshuva written by the Gedolei Achronim, the Yehuda, and one is a response written by Meir Shapiro about 90 years ago. And all these tshuvas, they're going to use this Gemara, although the Rav just told us it's Divrei Agoda, it's an Agadic Gemara, and it's hard to understand exactly all the details, but each one of these tshuvas takes an aspect of this Gemara, and they use it lahalacha to expound and to use this Gemara as a basis for a psak for their halacha. So we're going to start on page number 4. This is a tshuva from the Maharik. Maharik was of Yosef Cologne. That usually Maharik is classified as the last of the Rishonim. He was nifted already before the Shulchan Aruch was born even. I think it was in either France or Italy, somewhere in those European countries. The main prize student of the Maharik was Ravadia Bar Tenura, as you know, as the Rav on the Mishnayos, and the Rav is the first Achron. So the Maharik is the end of the era of the Rishonim, and the Maharik was posed with the following question. I'm going to speak out the question, it's not on the page here, I just copied what he wrote in the middle. The question he was posed was the following case. Now, keep in mind again, this is the mid-1400s, before we had the Beis Yaakov movement, and before Jewish girls were educated on a high level. You have a Jewish girl, she's married to a nice Jewish man, and for whatever reason, she was not educated, and she didn't realize that having a relationship with another man is usher. She understood that she's married, she has a husband, but she thought that maybe it's not so nice, but she didn't realize the severity that by her going ahead and having an affair with another man is prohibited, number one. And number two, she didn't realize that's going to answer her to her husband. Let's just take one step back. The halacha is a Jewish woman who is taken by force, who's raped by another man. The halacha is she's permitted to return to her husband as long as the husband is not a kohen, because she was taken by force. However, the halacha is if a woman goes willingly, she's desirous to have a relationship with another man, she becomes asura to her husband. That's the halacha. So this woman asked the Ma'arik, or somehow the question got to the Ma'arik, that she knows what she did. She went and she did the action willingly. However, she didn't realize the severity of what she was doing wrong. She didn't realize it was an avera, and she didn't realize that I was going to ask her to her husband. So is there a way for the rabbi, please find me a way, is it permissible for her to return to her husband? I guess the husband still wanted to have her back. And the Ma'arik was posed with the question, could we permit this woman to return to her husband or not? And the Ma'arik says absolutely not. This woman, I guess she should get an education, and she should realize that what she did was in a big avera, and she's asura. What's my raya? He has many steps to his raya. One of the Gemaras he brings as a raya to say that she's asura is from Esther. He says, let's see what happened by Esther. We have the story of Esther, like we spoke at the Gemara before, that once she went willingly to Achashveirosh, she becomes asur. Right? She becomes asur to return to Mordechai. Now says Ma'arik, let me tell you something Pashat to Ma'arik. Ma'arik uses a lot of poetic words here. He says, this is one of the most simplest things in the world to me, says the Ma'arik, that Esther did a tremendous mitzvah. There's no question about it, she did a tremendous mitzvah. He says, what's my proof? Don't tell me she did anything wrong, because the Gemara on the next page over there from what we copied, but I found the booklet, proves that Esther was one of the Shiva Neviot. Esther was one of the 7 women that were on a level of being a prophetess. How does the Gemara prove it? The Gemara proves it from the pasuk when it describes this story of Esther going in to Achashveirosh's room. It says, "Vatilbash Esther Malchus." And the Gemara makes a drasha that says that Esther put on royalty. The Gemara's bother, why say Esther put on royalty? It should say Esther put on her clothes of royalty. And the Gemara expounds upon it in ways of drush that we see from here that she was wearing Malchus, meaning she was wearing Ruach HaKodesh, and she had a level of Nevuah. Says the Ma'arik, you cannot tell me that at this point, when Esther is going into Achashveirosh, at this point we're proving that she's from the Shiva Neviah, she's from the 7 women that were Zoichet to be prophetesses, and at that point you tell me she's doing an Avera? There's no way you can say she's doing an Avera, and that's the proof of the Gemara that she is a Neviah. Elamai, says the Ma'arik, she's going, it's a complete mitzvah what she's doing the right thing. Nonetheless, even though she's doing a mitzvah, she's doing the right thing, she's saving Gans Klal Yisrael, all 127 known nations of the world at that time, all the Jews in those nations were being saved. Nonetheless, even though she's doing a great mitzvah, she's becoming a Asura to Mordechai. Like the Gemara says, she's not prohibited to return to Mordechai. Says the Ma'arik, so what do we see here? Even a woman like Esther, it goes into the case of Yael, which we're not going to discuss so much, the story in Tanakh of Yael, who had an affair with Sisera, and she also became Asura to her husband, but nonetheless, she did a great mitzvah. So if a woman who's doing a mitzvah still becomes prohibited to her husband, says the Ma'arik, it's a kol shekain, it's pasha, says the Ma'arik, that a woman who just didn't realize that she was doing an avera, she's also going to become prohibited to her husband. And that's the psak of the Ma'arik. Again, Ma'arik asking that a woman who does not realize the severity of living with another man, a married woman, she goes ahead and lives with another man, she becomes asura to her husband. You cannot claim innocence, you cannot claim innocence in this case, and one of his proofs is, he brings a raya from Esther, that Esther, even though she was doing a mitzvah, she still became asura to Mordechai. Okay, that's a good question. I don't have that worked out this minute. Yeah, I don't want to get lost in Yal because it's going to break the whole focus of the shir. But
what this is based on, Esther was did an avera b'meidid b'shma. How does her b'shma b'meidid make her better than this lady who's
he's calling it a mitzvah. She did a mitzvah.
She did an avera b'shma. It was a mitzvah ayid avera, but clearly she was maided in her ma'aser avera. You want to say it's the eighth matzah of Hashem, and she was allowed to do it. I hear her, but
she's not going to Gehenna for this. I'm saying it's not amazing Yishma sometimes is just forced in a situation. But she did a mitzvah. You're saying that's the Marika's calling it a mitzvah.
But the ma'aser itself. Why is it that a ma'aser b'meidid with kavanas lisha with a mitzvah lishma is for sure worse than this lady who's trying to black shoygeg on the command that she didn't know was up?
That's the one who's known.
Hagufa.
Okay.
They both want to roll with it. If by mistake she's going to be to us, if someone has no intention, the son will be us.
But Esther knew the Maisa was Usher the right. She knew she was doing an Avera. This lady's like...
She's doing a mitzvah. It's not an Avera.
If the very other one say, what should I do? Do it. You say, do it. You say, do it. You have to do it. I'll become us. You have to do it.
I hear that doing it Avera Lishma.
No, she's doing a mitzvah.
It's not an Avera.
It's not an Avera. It's a mitzvah. Okay, it's a mitzvah though. She told us the mitzvah is this one's not doing a mitzvah, it's not doing a mitzvah.
Because, use those expressions, use those words over there. Right, he shouldn't have been...
You want to say Alpha Nevuah Shavai. That it's Alpha Nevuah that she knows it's a mitzvah, and yet she still becomes Usher.
Yeah, that's true to the top of Kollel.
Okay, what's Kufta Islamai? So what's kind of got on the table right now? So we have a Gemara, which is Agoda, which the Marik is using. It's the fact exactly how his mechanics are working, but he's using this Gemara as a basis for a stock that a Ashes Yisrael, Nivalet Berotain, but she says it was B'shogig, meaning she didn't realize it was an Aveirah, she still becomes a Surah to husband. Now this halacha of Marik is codified by the Ramah. The Ramah and Even Ezer quotes this Marik and passes the halacha that she, an Ashes Yisrael, that willingly is mizana with another man, becomes a surah to husband, even though she says she didn't realize the severity of her sin. And the commentators on the Shulchan Aruch over there explain that the source for it is Esther. Another interesting halacha on the side point that I'm focused on this is that the Poskim speak out. This is the passing in the beginning of Even Ezer and some involved that just like we see from that Gemara on page 1, that Dr. Gimel on the base, that Esther went to the mikvah between the dia of Mordechai and Achashveirosh when she was still permitted. So the Shvus Yaakov, and this is the passing in other poskim also, that if a woman chas v'shalom is nensa, if a woman is raped chas v'shalom, and she's still muteris to her husband, the halacha is, even though she's 100% permitted and the husband should take her back, nonetheless she should go to the mikvah first, because it's a level of kedusha that she shouldn't chas v'shalom bring any klippas, hara, any impurities into, that's, okay, you want to fact check on the raya? But the poskim say that, we see from here, okay, fine. That's the halacha. Now,
Not like the Marshal.
not like the Marshal. Marshal I got it. Now we're going to go to page 5. On page 5, Rabbi Yehuda, the fascinating tshuva, he's responding to a question posed to him by Rabbi Shaya Pick. Rabbi Shaya Pick, who is the questioner in this response to him, is the author of the Meseres HaShas. The Meseres HaShas, for all of us who learn Gemara are familiar, you can't learn a Gemara without Meseres HaShas because he's the one who's always telling us where this Gemara is quoted every other place in the Gemara. So if they want to cross-reference the Gemara where it is, Rabbi Shaya Pick did this for us. Now, keep in mind, Rabbi Shaya Pick, this is the 1700s, this is before the advent of our modern computers, before computer software. He had it all worked out exactly, every chazal, where it was located, and was able to write it down, and helped us for generations and generations how to cross-reference Gemara. So Rabbi Shaya Pick was a tremendous goyin, was a contemporary of Rabbi Yehuda, writes him a letter, and he's very upset of Rabbi Yehuda. He says, I understand, Rabbi Yehuda, you're a tremendous goyin, you're a big Talmid Chacham, you're a big Rav, you're busy writing and answering answers in halacha all day, you're busy writing chidushim on Gemara, we have the Slach, which is also written by Rabbi Yehuda, is on Shas. Why don't you ever dedicate any of your time to explain the Agadah portions of the Talmud? The Gemara is full with Agadah, a lot of Drush. You're so busy with halacha, why don't you share with us some of your wealth in Agadah as well? Which Rabbi Yehuda does not take very lightly this attack on him. He says, I would love to, just I'm very busy. My schedule is full. I have a full-time schedule answering shilas in halacha and teaching Gemara, Shiurim. I don't have time to deal with Agadah. But just to make you happy, I'm going to give you shtickle Torah and Agadah to show you that I'm able to discuss Agadah Gemaras. And he decides to pick this Gemara that we're discussing as his prime example of how he's picking Agadah. Now he says, I'm picking this Agadah Gemara because it's Nageya, it has a lot of applicability to halacha. And he says the following. He quotes this Maharik that we just spoke out, the halacha of an Eshes Ish, that's Maharik Sak, that a married woman who lives with another man willingly, but she thinks she didn't realize the severity of her sin, she becomes asura to her husband, and the raya, the proof to the Maharik, again is from Esther. Now Judah says, I want to maybe raise a couple of questions on the validity of the foolproof proof that the Maharik says from Esther. He wants to deflect the proof a little bit and say maybe it's not so foolproof. Why not? It says like this. Let's examine the case again. We have a happily married couple, Mordechai and Esther. Esther gets grabbed and goes to the palace. She still keeps up a relationship with Mordechai while she's with Achashveirosh. Then eventually, because that was all by force. Now the next stage of the development over here is that she's going willingly to Achashveirosh. The Gemara says she's becoming asur to Mordechai. Jumps in Taisus and says, why didn't he divorce her? Says Rabbi Yehuda, 1 second. Let's backtrack a little bit in the story. Why did Taisus wait to ask his question now that she's going willingly? Why didn't Mordechai divorce Esther? Why didn't Taisus ask this question from day one? The second Achashveirosh's henchmen grab Esther, why didn't Taisus ask right away, stop, why did Mordechai divorce her? Why are we saying that she's that she's going back and forth between Esther and Mordechai, and only later Taisus gets bothered, oh, now she's going willingly, why didn't Mordechai divorce her? From day one, why didn't Mordechai divorce her and save her from prohibition of living with the guy when she's an Eishes Ish? Says Rabbi Yehuda Elamai, the simple answer is because she was being forced. So until now, for let's say approximately 5 years of the relationship, when she was first taken, until she was going to start going willingly to Achashveirosh, it was a forced relationship. She was an Anusa. So there's no shemet, there's no speck of an avera. An Eishes Ish that's ne'enat, that she's being taken by force, there's no reason to divorce her because it's 100% permissible for her to return to Mordechai. Okay, says, very good. Now we understand Taisus' question. Why Taisus is asking it only over here, now that she's going willingly. And he says, and I very much like the Rajba's question on Taisus. Taisus' answer was the reason why I didn't get divorced was because we're afraid that the get with all its agents would create a whole big rash, would create a whole big tumult, and people will find out about it, and it wouldn't be good for Mordechai. So the Rajba asked on that, why don't he send her a handwritten note? A handwritten get is valid midoraisa. Now, the Rajba again ended off the words. The end result of the Rajba didn't answer this question. The Rajba's quotable quote was Divrei Agadahain ve'ein meshivin alein. It's agadic in nature, and it's hard to, work out all the nitty-gritty details of the story. Says Rabbi Yehuda, I would like to suggest my own pshat in this Gemara. And I think the license Rabbi Yehuda has to do this is because the Rajba kind of leaves a loose end of exactly what happened. So that gives the opportunity for Rabbi Yehuda to jump in and offer an alternative pshat in the Gemara. And with this pshat, says Rabbi Yehuda, I want to deflect the raya of the Maharik. Says Rabbi Yehuda, I suggest that really Mordechai divorced Esther. And he divorced her with a handwritten get like the Rajba wanted to suggest. He gave her, Mordechai sent Esther a handwritten get, I hereby divorce you, signed Mordechai. So it's kasher midaraisa. Okay, so if so, asked Rabbi Yehuda on himself, so what's the problem? They're divorced. So later on, after the whole big tumult and, Esther saves all the Jews, everything's great, the Purim story's over, let Mordechai return and get remarried to Esther. Should be pretty simple. Says the Rabbi Yehuda, no. Here is where the problem lies, because everyone, Kuli Alma Maida, says Rabbi Yehuda, that Kiddushin and Chuppah need aided. So Ma'adach, just that which we could say, that the Gerish and the divorce, the Araisa, on a biblical level, was kosher without Eidim, but to permit a marriage, you need Eidim. And there, says Rabbi Yehuda, I'm afraid, and there Mordechai was afraid that by getting married through Eidim, then you start him a Melech, people are going to find out that there's a man who's marrying the queen, not the king. That's definitely going to be tabloid news, and therefore he was afraid for his life and he didn't do it. So says Rabbi Yehuda, I'm suggesting that which the Gemara says that Esther became asura to Mordechai. It doesn't mean there's a halachic Esther. There's no halachic restriction of Esther now. We're getting remarried to Mordechai. It's a practical issue. There's no practical way, says the Rabbi Yehuda, that Mordechai would be able to retake Esther as a wife, because now that everyone knows she's the queen and the chuppah needs witnesses. Therefore, says Rabbi Yehuda, I can't see that he would remarry. Says Rabbi Yehuda, if I'm correct in my premise, then we lose the proof that the Marik had from our Gemara. Marik was proven from our Gemara that even though we see Esther was an Eishes Ish, she was a married woman, and still she became Asur to Mordechai. Says Rabbi Yehuda, perhaps you can say that she wasn't an Eishes Ish, because maybe biblically, maybe Minat Torah, she was divorced with a Ksav Yad. That's Rabbi Yehuda's suggestion to deflect the Raya of Marik. Now, La Halacha, the Rabbi Yehuda continues and explains why the Marik is right according to Rashi. We're not going to have enough time to speak all that out, but in a foolproof Raya from all the Rishonim, Rabbi Yehuda feels that he has adequately thrown a wrench into the Raya by saying that possibly you can suggest that there was a get. Now, I have not found... He passed like the Marik. The halacha, he's not going to argue in no respect. That's why the Ramah passing, and that's the psak. The Raya from Esther is what he's trying to, nitty-gritty detail over there. I don't think the Raya is foolproof, says Rabbi Yehuda. Now, I could even find another source, at least so far yet, that suggests clearly, like the Rabbi Yehuda, that possibly there was a get. Seemingly, the Rishonim didn't want to learn like that. However,
according to Rabbi Yehuda, why did Mordechai give the get? Only that, because if he didn't give the get, should be
more severe issue.
nothing to do with the issue to him.
Right.
That's another view.
Right. I do this explain that the Gemara says that Esther became asur leMordechai. It's not a halachic issur according to Rabbi. This is a Jewish stretch. He's saying the issur of the Gemara was a practical matter.
It might have been because it was Lishma that she wouldn't have been answered him, even if it was she wouldn't have brought her.
But it's got an interesting source at the end.
Yeah.
The lady saying.
Well, yeah, I'm not trying. Let's try to clear it. So now, some people complain to me that the Noida B'Yehuda that I photocopied was hard to read, and I agree. Baruch Hashem Zechinu B'Derenu, that is a beautiful new print of Noida B'Yehuda by Machon Yerushalayim, and not only is it nice letters, much easier to read, but also there they have Gewaldige Hagoys from the Gedolei Achronim who bring their own notes on Noida B'Yehuda. So there they quote from Yerucham Fishel Perla. Yerucham Fishel Perla was one of the greatest minds of the last 100 years. He wrote notes on many of the Gedolei Achronim, and more than that, he wrote a whole 3-volume encyclopedic set on Sefer Mitzvahs, which is based on a short poem written by Rabbeinu Tzaddik Goyim. Just side note, Rabbeinu Tzaddik Goyim from the Goyinim writes a nice poetic poem which somehow hints to all 613 mitzvahs. Yerucham Fishel Perla takes 3 volumes, each one about 500 pages, and it goes through all the mitzvahs based on the Rasag. He was a tremendous genius. Anyway, Yerucham Fishel Perla points out the following. He finds a Sefer Aguda. The Aguda is from the Rishonim. He has an Aguda in Mesechtes Soita, and the way the Aguda quotes Taisis, it's a little bit of a smach, it's not in the booklet, a little bit of a smach for the Noida B'Yehuda. The Aguda writes, he asked Taisis' question, now why didn't Mordechai divorce Esther? And he writes, V'yesh Loma, this is the Aguda quoting from Taisis, the way the Aguda had Taisis, again, another Rishon, the way he had Taisis. V'yesh Loma says the Aguda, Hayitzarech Eidim Begerishid Ubekidushin. Mordechai would have required Eidim by the divorce and by the Kiddushin. So he doesn't say that they got divorced, but he's speaking out that Yerucham Fishel Perla is bringing us as a small smach, as a small riot to Noida B'Yehuda, that it was also a concern that you would need Eidim for the remarriage. Even if there would have been a divorce, you would be concerned for the remarriage of Mordechai to Esther. Okay, so again we had the Ma'arik, which wanted to paskin his halacha with a raya from Esther that a Jewish woman who's married, who is mizanet b'shoigeg, meaning she doesn't realize the severity of her sin, she's still usher to her husband. The Noida B'Yehuda la halacha is not arguing on the Ma'arik. He's just saying that the raya from Esther is questionable because maybe you can suggest that there was a get in such an instance. Okay, now here comes the exciting part. We have a tshuva from Meir Shapiro on page 6 from the Ora Meir. Meir Shapiro is most famous for helping institute the Daf Yomi worldwide from the Knesset Gedola when there was a big conference in Europe. Besides that, he was a tremendous goyin. He wrote many tshuvas and halachas for him. And this is a tshuva written, next week will be the 90th anniversary of this tshuva. It was written on Tesvav Adar, Taf Reish Pei Dal, 1924, Shushan Purim. And there was an unfortunate story that happened in the, I don't know if it was this town or a different town, of where Meir Shapiro lived. He was posed this question. There was a nice Jewish couple married, and unfortunately, the woman ran away with a non-Jewish man. Okay, she ran away. She comes back a couple years later. I don't know, it doesn't say exactly how many years. Let's say 2-3 years later, she shows back up in town with a baby that she had with this Goyish man. She comes knocking on her husband's door, and she says, "Honey, let me back in." He says, "You're usher. You know, you ran away from me. I didn't divorce you. You ran away. You live with this guy. You have a child here. You have a child now who's fathered by a guy. You're not coming back." She says, "No. I ran away with that guy, but he did a ma'aser kishuf on me." Doesn't say exactly what he did. He put me into some type of trance, maybe hypnotism or some type of other black magic. I don't know exactly what happened. And she claimed she never went willingly with this guy. She was in a trance for 2 years. Everything that was done to her was against her will. Now she's back. She's cleansed from her trance. She wants back to her husband. Husband said, "That's a good story. Maybe I'll believe you, but let's go ask the Rav what we should do." So they went to the local Rav. The Rav wasn't sure. He sent the Shiloh to Meir Shapiro. So we're not going to get involved. It seems like the Rabbanim didn't really buy her story that she was in a trance for 2 years. But the crux of the question that the Meir Shapiro is dealing with is if we're going to say that the dia of a guy, the relationship that she had with the guy, does that ask her to her husband? Because the halacha is that usually if let's say in a typical case, well, hopefully not typical, but in a more regular case, where an Eshes Yisrael might have an affair with another man, with a Jewish man, so then the halacha is she's and willingly, she went on her own accord, so halacha is she's usher to her husband, the woman now became usher to her husband, and she's also usher to the person she had the affair with. Usher the Baal, usher the Boil. In this case, where she was usher to the person, the guy anyway, because he was a non-Jew, so there's no asur the Boil, because it's usher v'kayim, she already was usher. So the question is, will that play out? The Isser to Baal, does she become prohibited to the husband or not? Now, let's just first cut to the chase. The end of the day, she's prohibited. The Meir Shapiro did not allow her to go back to her husband, but he did suggest to give some practical advice that, of course, he should divorce her, and he should, and the family, because part of the concern seemed like that the woman's family was very concerned that if she doesn't get remarried again, or she doesn't get returned to her husband, her previous, Jewish husband, she'll go crazy and she'll run away again. I'll never see her again. So Meir Shapiro was suggesting practical piece of advice. He said, set up an escrow account for her, put some money away for her at the bank, make her financially stable, and then hopefully she'll be able to find a nice Jewish man and get remarried. That's the end result, and he prohibited her from staying married to her ex or her husband. But in the middle here, he gets involved with a potential raya that a bia of a goy is going to aser. In fact, what's the raya? From Esther and Achashveirosh. That's our classic Gemara we had on Daf Tes Vav in Megillah. Esther, a Jewish girl who has a relationship with a guy willingly, Achashveirosh, she became asur to Mordechai. That should be an open shut case, a klar raya that a Jewish woman that lives with a non-Jewish man becomes prohibited to her husband. However, says the Meir Shapiro, not so fast. I'm going to show you a Zohar, says the Meir Shapiro, that's going to deflect this raya from the Bavli. And on page 6, if you look in the left column, it's the paragraph that touches the word Vigam. It's the first full paragraph on the left column, on page 6. The Meir Shapiro says, Vigam hoya mokim l'hoya bezel, we could ask on this, Medivri HaZohar HaKadosh in Devarim. The Zohar HaKadosh in Sefer Devarim says as follows. The Ba'asra de Esther, in place of Esther, is Chalafis Leila Achashveirosh, she exchanged herself to Achashveirosh, Sheda. A Sheda is a feminine form of a shade. In other words, the Zohar learns that Achashveirosh, Esther Hamalka, Esther the Neviah, never went to Achashveirosh. She had a way, don't ask me how this works and how she did it, I don't know the answer to that, but the Zohar clearly is saying that Esther exchanged herself to be a shade and sent the shade to live with Achashveirosh. And continuing in that paragraph, he writes, V'ihi, and the Zohar says, she herself is Hadara, she was returning the Droya de Mordechai. So the real Esther was able to return to Mordechai. The cloned Esther, quote unquote, was one that went to Achashveirosh. He continues, the Zohar in Tikkunim also says this, V'im Kain, Meir Shapiro ends off, there's no foolproof raya that the bia of a guy answers to the Jewish husband, because I'm now machlokes Bavli and the Zohar.
No, but the Zohar is mocking that if it would have been her, she would have been not there.
Okay, one second. But you can't bring a raya from Esther. The Zohar is arguing on the Gemara. The Zohar does not, right? The Gemara has this drasha of kasher avadati, and the Zohar is arguing on that drasha. The Zohar simply. Okay, one second. We're going to do it. Let's do it. So according to the Zohar, the Zohar is arguing about the Zohar when it says kasher avadati, the Gemara when it says kasher avadati means that she became asur to Mordechai because she went willingly to Achashveirosh. According to Meir Shapiro, the way he's understanding the Zohar is that the Zohar is going to argue on that drasha. That's not muskim hakol. Not everyone agrees that she went willingly to Achashveirosh. She sent her counterpart to Achashveirosh instead, and therefore she according to the Zohar, never became asur to Mordechai, and therefore, says the Meir Shapiro, it's not a foolproof proof from Esther that to prove that if a non-Jew lives with a Jewish woman, she becomes prohibited to her husband, because maybe Esther never went to Mordechai. That's what he suggests.
What does he do with the Baraki?
He has maybe learned simply. The Zohar could also learn Psukim simply sometimes. That instead of expounding it, just said simply reading the Psukim without the whole Gemara was that she's afraid she's going to lose her life. That Achashveirosh is going to kill her. Okay, I want to finish up. They told me I have to end at 10:30. Now, there's a Shuvah Sefer called Paras Yosef, which is written by Rabbi Yosef Halevi Zweig, who was a Rav in Europe and subsequently moved to Brooklyn at the end of his life. In Chelik phase of his Shuvas, the Sefer is maybe 50 pages thick. More than half the Sefer is dedicated to arguing on the Shuvas of Meir Shapiro. Not sure who he was, but he obviously took up great issue with many of Meir Shapiro's Shuvas. And he writes the following. I didn't copy it. I couldn't get it here. But he writes the following Shuvah. He says, I have a major question on the Zohar. Chazal tell us that Esther had a son with Achashveirosh. Esther had a son, his name was Daryavish. He was the one who eventually let the Yidden rebuild the Beis HaMikdash. So he asked son of Meir Shapiro, how do you work with this Zohar and the fact that Chazal tell us that Esther had a son? If Esther never went to Achashveirosh because she sent a shade, so where did the son come from? She had a son named Daryavish. Okay. So he brings the Chidah and Sefer Nachal Kidumim. The Chidah has the Sefer on Chumash called Nachal Kidumim, and this Rabbi's wife brings this down and wants to suggest the following. He quotes another Zohar. The Zohar says, this is the Zohar, it's not halacha, this is the Zohar, there's a hanhoga that a person should speak to his wife kaidem atashmish. Why, says the Zohar? A person should make sure to speak to his wife because to make sure she's not a shade. The way I understand that is that a shade doesn't talk, I think. I'm not sure. Next time I meet one, I'll try to find out. But if I understand that shade doesn't talk, the Zohar says if you speak to your wife before Tashmish, so you'll know she's not a shade and everything is great. Says the Nachal Kidum, says the Chidah, for the first 5 years of the relationship, Esther and Achashveirosh never spoke face to face. Esther was commanded by Mordechai, do not say who you are, do not say who you come from. She was given very strong directives what to say and what not to say. So says the Chidah, the first 5 years in the relationship, Esther and Achashveirosh never had a face-to-face conversation. Anytime there was messages back and forth, there was always a middleman or middlewoman in between them, bringing the messages back and forth so that Esther was a way of protecting Esther, that she would never spill the beans, so to speak, and say where she came from. So he says, very good. Because for the first 5 years, when she was taken by force by Achashveirosh to Achashveirosh's bedroom, there was no conversation, because at that point there couldn't be someone else in between. It wouldn't be appropriate. So there was no conversation at that point, because she never spoke to Achashveirosh for the first 5 years, only through a middle person. So the first 5 years, when she was taken by force to Achashveirosh's room, there was no conversation. So it's very easy, says the Chidah, she could send a shade, because the shade doesn't talk, and Esther never talked to Achashveirosh, so there's no concern that there could be any conversation. So she can easily get away with sending a shade. Says the Chidah, but once she was now going willingly to Achashveirosh, there was going to be open communication. Now, even though, truth be told, if you look in the Psukim, it's only later on where she revealed her ancestry related to Achashveirosh, but he's putting it all together. But now that there's going to be open communication, now they're going to start talking face to face, so she can't send her shade anymore to Achashveirosh, because the shade is not going to be able to talk. And Esther now talks to Achashveirosh. So therefore, it says the Chidah, from this point on, Esther cannot send the shade anymore, and therefore it's not a stira that Esther had a child with Achashveirosh, because at this point, Esther herself was really going. She wasn't sending her shade anymore. We're following the logic? Says when the Zohar says that she sent the shade, so according to the Chidah, that was only up to a certain point. Because at a certain point, once they had open communication, you can't send the shade anymore, because Achashveirosh is going to engage Esther in conversation. She's going to have to speak back, and if it's a shade, that's not going to go too far. Therefore, says this Sefer Pras Yosef, he's being ma'ir on the Meir Shapiro. He can't be a raya that Pias Akum, that a relationship with the guy doesn't answer from the Zohar, because that Zohar is only talking about, according to the Chidah, up until a certain point in history, until the relationship with Achashveirosh and Esther changed. Okay? Seemingly, Meir Shapiro has a KO, and he has no raya. So it bothers me very much, especially because Meir Shapiro had no children, but my mother's maiden name was Shapiro. They were related to Meir Shapiro. So I felt very hurt that it seemed like, how can he miss a shot in the Zohar? So I had to do some investigation. And there's a pirush on the Zohar called Masak Mizbash. It's a heintige pirush. But what it is, it kind of makes the Zohar readable even for the simple layman like me who are not trained in the ways of Kabbalah. And it makes the Zohar very like a Kahati Mishnah, so to speak. Kind of a running commentary on the Zohar so you can understand exactly what's going on. So I took a look inside there, and we'll see that the Zohar is not so simple. I'll try to finish off quickly. The way the Masak Mizbash learns the Zohar based on the Arizal and the Chaim Vital and other Gedolei HaMekubalim who explain the Zohar is going to blow you away. They're arguing the Chidah. They're going to come out, it's Machleket Hala in the Zohar. I'll read you some of the words of the Arizal. The Arizal says, Esther gave a shade over in her place. She had a way of separating her chelek hara from herself, the evil part of herself, the Yetzer Hara part of herself. And this quote-unquote clone looked exactly like Esther. And with that other part of Esther, that is what which Achashveirosh had a relationship with. Esther nishra b'kedushasa. Esther always remained in her kedusha. You'll ask me, the Arizal says, What's a dayavish? They had a child. Okay, listen to this one. That was the klipa noiga shelo. Mibechinas hara. V'haisa yadat he u'Mordechai. She and Mordechai both knew lahashbia hashade. They knew how to create the shade. Hayetzahara shelo ayidei shem mafurish. They had the secret recipe how to make the shade. Sheyitzlabesh b'dmus guf, that to look like a person. V'yelech el Achashveirosh u'misham noel dayavish. And from that union of Achashveirosh with a shade is what dayavish was born from. Mitzat hashade. V'harehu ben Esther mamish, but this is, I don't know exactly what he means. L'chein haya chetzav toiv v'chetzav ra. There was a chelak of ra and dayavish from the shade. L'chein haya goy. Therefore, the Arizal learns that dayavish did not have a din of a Jewish child. Dayavish had a din of a goyish child, but he had the schus to be able to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash because he had some shemetz in him, some speck in him of Esther. Now, again, don't answer what this means. I'm just telling you the words of the Arizal. Ki haya naitzim rishus tchil. He gave permission. Basically, what comes out, according to Arizal, I'm overtime ready. According to the Arizal, the way the Arizal understands the Zohar, Esther, even after she was quote unquote going willingly to Achashveirosh, there's still a machlokes Zohar and Bavli. The Zohar learns Esther physically, in her own full flesh and blood, never went to Achashveirosh. Even when she was going willingly, she was sending her shade, and somehow the shade was able to conceive and carry a child, and that child, I don't know. And that child, okay, I don't know. I'm telling you what that Rizal says. How to answer up the Zohar that a Meir Shapiro should be correct. The child was dayavish. That child, Rizal learns at least. I don't know how we go. That this child was a goy, and therefore it comes out again that there's now machlokes, a bona fide machlokes according to Rizal between the Zohar and the Bavli, and therefore Meir Shapiro is his raya from the Zohar that it's against the Gemara would be Ois Kahalton. So just to quickly recap what happened over here, we had a Gemara which said that Mordechai was married to Esther. They lived together even when she went to Achashveirosh. The Gemara seems to say that once she went to Achashveirosh, willingly she became Asura to Mordechai. They had the Rishonim Kasha, what happened with the get. The Taisus answers that there was no get because it would be well known. The Rajba doesn't like that because you give a get b'ksav yadai. But he seems to leave the question hanging. He just leaves at least end. Doesn't have a sufficient answer. Marik proves to Mar Gemara that an Eishes Ish Shenenza, that she was Mizane B'Shoigeg, means she didn't realize the severity of her sin. She still becomes also to her husband because the Kolsh came from Esther who did a mitzvah, and that's how we pass in La Halacha. Maybe Yehuda tries to deflect the Raya from the Marik by learning the Gemara a different way that really there was a divorce. And we have a Meir Shapiro bringing up a Zohar that argues in the Gemara in Gansin and says that Esther never went and Esther never became Asur to Mordechai, just that she sent her shade. Thank you very much.
Wait a second. Don't worry about going over stuff around Zohar right now. It's like out of time. According to the Zohar, you have to say also. So Shamizel, he argues with the Gemara, the Gemara says that one Mandam Esther was really beautiful. She had a quick Kesha. There was something radiant about her that when you looked at her, it gave her a beautiful, visage, but she really wasn't beautiful. That doesn't go over to a shade. That doesn't go over to a shade.
Okay.
That much I know. That much I know. And Rabbi Kowalsky, you're not turning this into Big and Sin?
Well, yeah, the Big and Sin has a Shiloh, fascinating Shiloh, that there was, okay, for those who want to leave, it's leave, but the Big and Sin has a Shiloh like this. There was a guy going around from shtetl to shtetl in Europe, knocking on doors, telling all the women, "Hi, I'm Eliyahu Hanavi. I'm here to be Megal the Kate." So
then that's the fact. He didn't do that right away.
He had a
place to stay.
Right.
Put him up, and he acted like he looked like a real tzaddik, and he ate nothing, and he traveled all day. I mean, he played the part ad nauseum, right? He played the part ad nauseum, and then finally one day, now you take over.
Right. Finally, one day he would tell the woman of the household, I'm really Eliyahu Hanavi. That's why I'm such a tzaddik. I'm here to be Megal Mashiach. Something exact nusach he used. But we just have to, you have to have a relationship first beforehand. And this guy did this ploy on a couple of women until finally it became revealed to the Rabbanim what was going on. There's some Meshigan out there, and now a question came up. The women thought they were doing a mitzvah because they thought somehow they were convinced by this crazy guy that he's Eliyahu Hanavi, the Mashiach is coming, whatever. They all bought into this whole Mashiach scare. And now the question came to the Rabbanim: do the women become prohibited to the husbands or not? That's a whole different discussion. I use Marik, right? Okay. I saw quoted. It's in the Sefer Eitz Chaim Sham Mem Tes Perek Vav. I saw quoted in the Mem Tes Perek Vav. I saw. Sam Memtet. I still quote it in the bottom of the Zohar, in the Muslim Divine.
Not like you are.